Hey guys, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and today I thought I'd bring you back some Battlefield 3 gameplay because that seemed to have gone down really well in the last video. Today I'm going to be discussing something called the transition, and this is about transitioning from PlayStation 4 to PC in terms of playing, and I've had lots of questions about how difficult it can be, what are the challenges I faced, and things that I've noticed about being on the two different platforms at the same time and trying to get used to the new PC platform. So today I thought I'd talk about, in terms of Battlefield, differences and similarities that I have seen. So to start off with, I think I'll kick it off with kind of a basic one, and this is the fact that the principles of Battlefield are very much the same on both consoles. You still need to be very much situationally aware, you need to be aware of your surroundings, your movements, how you're going to aim, and just how you look at certain engagements. The basics of Battlefield, things that you do, the kind of gameplay that you encounter doesn't change very much. You don't notice people doing things differently. The only slight difference I've noticed in the basic fundamentals of Battlefield in terms of improvements on PC is that they are a lot more better at effectively communicating. So on console we only have 8-player parties, it can be pretty difficult to talk in and amongst teams, we have to send bloody PlayStation messages which can take ages if we need to relay a message, whereas on PC of course there is the in-game chat and there is of course TeamSpeak servers if you use those as well. So it seems that teams seem a lot more coordinated and organised than I've seen on console. One strange thing, actually, that I have noticed on PC is that people tend to crouch and lay down a lot less than they do on console. And I think this is because some players don't mess around with their key bindings as much as they probably should, but on console I've seen lots of players crouching and lots of people laying down very often. You know, it's very rare for you to walk past an entire group of people without seeing one person crouched or prone. It's not a bad thing, it's not an amazing thing necessarily, it's just a basic thing that I see quite frequently. Whereas on PC, because I believe most people haven't changed their keys or key mapping and they're using Z to go prone, which is very difficult to reach sometimes if you're a new player, I hardly see people going prone, and I think that's really weird. I just don't know how I noticed it. You know, after a few rounds of Battlefield I was like, I actually saw nobody laying down in that entire game, which was really weird. On PC, one of the things that I have gotten a lot more used to is the aiming, and it's so much more effective with a keyboard and mouse. I know you hear people say it and they're like, yeah, I don't disagree, I prefer aiming with analog sticks, but after a while of playing I can see why that is a thing, because the responsiveness and snappiness of a mouse and keyboard is a lot higher than the sort of sluggish pace of an analog stick, and I only really noticed this when I went back to play PlayStation 4 Battlefield, and I noticed that my analog sticks weren't so fluid with my movements, so although I was moving around quite, you know, pacily and I was doing quite well, it wasn't as snappy. I couldn't really lock to somebody's head as quickly as I wanted to. So for example on PC I'm finding it a lot easier to make headshots because it's a lot easier to quickly move into that position and take the shot, whereas on console it could be a lot more sluggish. You also have aim assist as well, which is throwing your aim off sometimes, and can be really frustrating, so that's something that I've definitely noticed as an improvement. And kind of in line with that point as well, sniping is so much more easier on PC. I can see why they have sniper limits, so to speak, on certain servers where you can only have like 8 snipers per team, because it is just ridiculously easier to do it. In fact, today in some of the gameplay, you're seeing me sniping because even though I'm a brand new PC player, I was very much capable of picking up my first bolt action sniper and doing really well with it. I think it's just, again, linking in with that fluidity and responsiveness of gameplay that made it so much easier to get headshots, that made sniping a lot more effective for me. Now you may notice the word fluidity being thrown around quite a bit in this video, and that essentially is how I can describe PC gameplay. Now, I'm finding it somewhat confusing to put words to this because you really have to try it to understand, but essentially when you use a keyboard and mouse and you have a really high frame rate, I think I get about 140 FPS on Battlefield 3, and it's just smooth. You notice everything of the game, and it sounds really weird by putting words to you notice everything, but even the subtle movements and the slight movements in the game look so much more better and feel a lot more better as well. So when I'm even slightly edging my mouse to the left and my character's moving with it, it feels so much more responsive and snappy. And I only really noticed this again when I went back to play console and I was moving the analog sticks and I was like, why isn't he moving as fast as I'd like him to, or making these slight movements? And I think that's also down to the fact that the analog stick has a dead zone in the middle where there is no responsiveness to the player, so my model will not move if I'm moving my analog stick only a small amount, but on a mouse the slightest of movements is detected, especially with the kind of precision that my mouse has, and you don't really notice it again until you use the analog sticks. And I was kind of moving my player around, I was like, just why isn't this as responsive as I'd like it to be? And maybe that's something which could be solved in the future, but right now it just feels a lot better to play with a keyboard and mouse than it does with a controller. Now there's one thing which I have noticed, and it is so much harder to fly on PC. I can see why some people buy those like jet pilot joysticks, because using a mouse is just... it's just not right. It's just, I can't explain it with words. It just doesn't feel right. You kind of like move your mouse forward and the helicopter kind of goes, oh yeah, I've got this, don't worry. But there's just so many different keys to hit at the same time. It can make your flow of gameplay a lot more challenging, so to speak. I mean, sure, if I put some time into it and invested myself and learnt the controls effectively, I'd probably be okay. But moving with analog sticks is just so much more simplistic, and it also comes down to vehicles as well. When I'm moving with vehicles in Battlefield 4 or Hardline, or you know, any Battlefield for that matter with analog sticks, it's very simplistic. I just hold down R2 or right trigger or whatever you use, and you accelerate and you move your analog sticks around to move. Whereas on a keyboard and mouse, it's like, okay, I want to use W to go forward, D to go backwards and reverse. I'm gonna have to move my mouse around a lot. It's just, it's not as nice to use the keyboard and mouse for that principle, and it's been really getting on my nerves. I'm kind of thinking of actually buying a joystick so I can fly a lot more effectively. There has been one thing which is absolutely I can't even describe how infuriating this is, and this is not having a server browser in the actual physical game itself. Now, when you launch Battlefield on your desktop, it actually launches Google Chrome, which then goes to Battlelog, because that's how you do your server browsing. You actually physically have to go into an online server browser, find a server, and bearing in mind there are no EA official servers, so these servers could have very strange rules, very stupid things going on within them. And then once you find a server, you press it and it opens up your game. And if you want to switch server, you have to alt-tab out of the game. And everybody knows that alt-tabbing out of the game can cause a shit ton of problems, especially if you want to play full screen as well. And it's just not right. Like, it's... on console, you put a disk in, you press server browser, all of the servers show up, and that's it. You just have to press on a server. On PC, it's... you have to alt-tab out onto Chrome, you have to go through Chrome, find another server which is more interesting, and there are no official ones, and it's just so much more hassle than it should be. And I really hope that they change that in the next Battlefield. I really do. Battlelog just should not exist anymore. So the final point I'm going to make is going to be on graphics cards, FPS, and just kind of an overall sort of send-off on this entire topic. And obviously, yes, it's true. Playing on PC means a lot higher graphics if you can afford the graphics card, which I have a 970 in my system. So I'm currently playing on Ultra and getting about 80-90 FPS, which looks fantastic. And yes, it is a lot better than playing on PlayStation 4 graphics. But there's one thing that you have to remember here, and this is something which definitely makes the console a lot more appealing in certain circumstances, is that I have a pretty good system. There will be people who have better systems than I do, and there will be people who have significantly worse systems than I do as well. And what that means is that they might be getting badder frame rates, they might be getting a lot more frame drops, they might be having more problems, and it makes it a lot easier for me. It's an uneven playing field. Now, I don't know how render distance works in Battlefield yet, I haven't worked that out, but I imagine if you have a better graphics card, your render distance will be a lot better than others, especially in games like Arma 3 as well. Like, I could kill somebody and they might not even know I'm there because they can't see me, because their graphics card cannot perform enough to actually render that far out. And that's one thing about a console which is going to remain appealing to me, is the fact that it's a completely level playing field in every way possible. A couple of other examples I can think of is that if you have an SSD, you load the maps a lot faster than others, you can get into vehicles a lot quicker. If you have a better monitor with a lower refresh rate, you see things more responsively. It's just not as even as it would be on console. So guys, that's it for today's video about the transition. Overall, I've been able to transition over to PC very easily, but I'm also still enjoying my console as well. So it's kind of awesome to have both in the same kind of room. It's really great to play on both platforms. And I think you'll see a lot from both platforms in the not too distant future as well. As always guys, it's been me Lachlan, the Tactical Brit, and I'll see you again with another video within the coming days.